Quick review. In part one of this series on learned optimism, we briefly discussed self esteem, depression, optimism, pessimism, explanatory style, and learned helplessness. In part two, I shared with you that becoming optimistic can be as simple as learning a new set of skills that help you talk to yourself from a more encouraging viewpoint and when you encounter personal failures. And even though being optimistic can change a lot in your life, don't expect it to change everything. It is worth the work, though. We learned that the central skill of optimism is changing the destructive things you say to yourself when you experience the hard parts of life. I also shared with you the ABCs of optimism. Then, in part three, we learned what it means to be pessimistic and that we can reverse it. We also learned more about learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is the giving up response, the quitting reaction that follows from the belief that whatever you do doesn't matter. And that explanatory style is the manner in which you habitually explain to yourself why events happen. When we learn to recognize how we explain things to ourselves, we can make clearer decisions and choose what we want to think instead of going for the easy, more comfortable way. I also introduced you to the three parts that make up your explanatory style. They are permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization. If you haven't listened to the past three episodes, I highly suggest it. I've broken it down into bite-sized pieces so it's easier to understand. There's a lot we're learning here. It helps me to learn things in smaller doses, and I hope it helps you too. When you learn skills that show you what you are thinking and how to change it, that's when progress starts to happen. You change your explanatory style. You develop confidence because you control the thoughts you have. Finally, in part three, we added the D to our ABCs of optimism. You use the ABCs to evaluate what you have experienced, and the D helps you to make a conscious choice. Are you going to distract yourself from the circumstance, or are you going to jump in and dispute it? There is a time for both. Learning these steps can help you to really see how you have a choice in everything you let your thoughts go to. There is so much self-empowerment when you think about it in this way. Now let's get to the next part I wanted to share with you about learning optimism. I'm going to add one more D. I forgot to share it on the last episode, so I'm really sorry about that. But luckily we talk every week, so I can keep you up to date even when I forget stuff. Now, like I said, I forgot one of the D's from the ABCs of optimism in the last episode. I shared with you that once you take a closer look at the thoughts you are trying to become more aware of, you can then choose two ways to deal with them. You can distract yourself or you can dispute the thought. Disputing is actually more effective in the long term because when you take the time to disagree with what you don't want to believe anymore, you'll be less likely to let those thoughts back in. The third D that I didn't share last week is distancing. This begins by recognizing that your beliefs are just that, a belief. They may or may not be true. Now, it seems easy to distance yourself from things others say to you that just aren't true. For example, if a really ornery 4-year-old told you that your hair was purple and it's clearly brown, it's easy to brush that away and distance yourself from it and not believing that it's true. It's not so easy to do this when you do this to yourself, sometimes even multiple times a day. We get caught in the belief that whatever we think must be true. I'm here to tell you from very personal experience and from the experiences of many friends and clients, just because you think it doesn't make it true. What you say to yourself may just be as unfounded and silly as a 4-year-old telling you that you have purple hair. More than likely, these unfounded thoughts are just bad habits of thought, one that you have added to from many negative experiences that you've had in your life. It could be something that a mean neighbor, or an over-controlling parent, or a super jealous friend in high school may have said to you that could have added to what you already are believing negatively about yourself. But just because you hear it from your own thoughts doesn't make it true. Really take some time and think about that. It's a bad habit thought, a pattern that was learned. And remember, if something can be learned, it can be unlearned. That thought just gets better and better, doesn't it? These are just beliefs. So take the thought out of your head, take a step back, some distance between you and the thought. Hold it out away from you and really look at it. Actually hold your hand out away from your body and visualize the thought as if it was sitting on your hand. Is it true? Is it? Is this a belief that you want to hold on to? Or can you just let it go? Let it float away like a cloud in the bright blue sky. Yes, you can really just decide to let it go. That's what thinking about your thinking can do for you. Distance yourself from the thought. That's the third D I wanted to add to last week's episode. So I have one more step to add here. It's the E in the ABCs of optimism. This is the final step in taking a pessimistic thought and making it an optimistic one. It's the E. And E stands for energization, and that's a hard one to say. As you begin watching your thoughts and taking them through the A, B, C, D, E's of optimism, start paying attention to the energization that takes place as you succeed in dealing with negative beliefs. Energy is something that you can feel. It can increase or decrease depending on the situation. Energy is actually all around us. But to simplify, let's just talk about what you feel inside yourself. When you explain what is happening to you in personal, permanent, and pervasive ways, you feel your energy drop and you begin to feel helpless. When you explain what is happening to you in the opposite way, the more optimistic way, you actually become more energized. The consequences of our beliefs are not just actions, but they affect our feelings as well. Even when these beliefs you're looking at are minor, you can still feel the energy in your body shift. In fact, it's better to practice with the easier situations than trying this out with something that's more complicated or when your emotions are really high or elevated. Start looking for places you can practice. This is a skill worth learning. The results change so much in how you live your life. Now, this theory of changing your thoughts is also called cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive therapy's goal is to show you how your thinking affects your mood. It teaches you to think in a less negative way about yourself and your life. It's based on the understanding that thinking negatively is a habit that, like any other habit, can be broken. Cognitive behavioral therapy is something that is used with therapists. And it is something that if you have some really big traumas in your life, you need to be doing with a licensed therapist. But you can also do the ones that are less traumatic with yourself or with a coach like myself. You'll see that I've been teaching you a lot of these steps in our past episodes. Cognitive behavioral therapy has 5 steps. I think you're going to see the similarities in what we've been learning about learned optimism. I think it's a valuable way to share these steps because it may make more sense to some of you. I hope you connect with one of these ways that I'm sharing so that you can begin to learn this skill. Again, if you have deep trauma that you're trying to work through, please see a licensed therapist. Number 1, recognize your automatic thoughts. Begin looking for thoughts that bring negative feelings. Number 2, dispute the automatic thoughts. Instead, focus on evidence that contradicts your automatic thoughts. Number 3, make different explanations of your automatic thoughts. Try to make them less personal, permanent, or pervasive. Number 4, distract yourself from depressing thoughts. Learn to control not only what you think about, but when you think about it. Number 5, recognize and question the depressing thoughts. Choose a new set of more optimistic thoughts. This stuff is for real, my friends. Don't let go of the main idea here. You get to choose your thoughts. It's not something that we grew up learning, but we can learn it now. If you are in a major depression, this is also something you need to work through with a therapist. The things that I share here are the things that you learn once you've gotten out of the darkness of the depression and more in that fog of where you can start to see but need a little bit more help. Okay, so that's it for today. But there is one more area that I'd like to talk to you about in this series because it has been a powerful tool that I've learned and use daily that helps me to keep above my depression. I'm going to share that with you next week. I hope you'll join me for next week because that will be the last episode in this series. Thank you for sticking with me through this. Thank you for joining me here today. And remember, I see you. I understand how hard you're trying, and I'd like to help however I can. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you back here again next week.